The first time I noticed something was off was when I realized I hadn't been invited to a single one of her office events for months. It wasn't that I cared about the parties themselves, but it was strange. Melissa and I had always been a team. We'd been together for years, and she always made it a point to include me in everything, from birthday parties to work functions. But lately, she'd started going to these after-hours work mixers and never once mentioned me joining her. It wasn't even subtle. I'd ask if I could come along, and she'd say, "It's just work stuff. Honey, you wouldn't enjoy it." At first, I brushed it off. She was probably just busy with her promotions and extra work projects. I'd even convinced myself that it was a good thing. Less responsibility on my plate, right? I didn't need to tag along to her every work event. But deep down, I started to feel invisible. I'd sit at home, watching TV shows that no longer interested me, scrolling through social media while she was out at these work functions, surrounded by people I didn't know. Then came the night it all unraveled. She'd been unusually distant for the past few days, hardly even acknowledging me when I came home from running errands or when we had meals together. She would glance up from her phone briefly, offer a small smile, then go back to her texting. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to seem insecure, but when she came home that evening, the tension was undeniable. She had this odd air of contentment around her, like she'd been basking in something she'd kept hidden from me. We were sitting on the couch together, her phone on the coffee table. She was distracted, which wasn't unusual, but something felt different. Then, without any apparent reason, she said, "David's such a great guy. He's better at everything than you." She chuckled, but I didn't join her. For a split second, I couldn't move. The words hung in the air between us like a slap I didn't see coming. "David?" I asked, almost mechanically. My voice felt foreign in my throat. "Yeah, you know, the guy from the office," she said, dismissing it as nothing. "He's just so quick with everything, and he doesn't get frustrated like you do sometimes. I've never met someone so sharp." I didn't know how to respond. There was something in the way she said it that made me feel small. It wasn't just a harmless joke. The way she spoke about him, it was as if David had become her ideal in a way I never was. I wanted to say something, to confront her, but I didn't. Instead, I sat there, pretending like I didn't care. Pretending it didn't eat away at me to know that my wife, the woman I'd always put above everything, found someone else better than me. But deep down, I felt the stirrings of something that told me this was just the beginning. That joke, the words she had so casually thrown out, had opened a door to something I wasn't prepared to face. After that, I couldn't stop thinking about David. What did she see in him? Why was she so comfortable joking about him being better than me? I had to know more. The feeling of not being good enough for her had started to fester, and I could feel it in my bones that something was changing, not just with her, but with me too. The next day, I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed her. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I needed to know if there was more to her relationship with David than she was letting on. The next morning, I decided to follow her. I hadn't planned it. It just kind of happened. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, and I saw her get ready to leave. She looked beautiful, of course. Melissa always did, even when she was just throwing on a sweater and jeans. She grabbed her purse, said something about being late for a meeting, and kissed me goodbye. I didn't even question it. I just watched her go. But as soon as the door closed behind her, something inside me snapped. I needed to know if what she had said about David was just a casual remark or if there was something deeper, something I wasn't seeing. I grabbed my jacket, slipped out the door behind her, and got into my car. I knew it was ridiculous, that I was overthinking it, but my mind couldn't let go. I didn't want to be the type of husband who would follow his wife around, but the thought of her and David, them together, kept gnawing at me. It wasn't just jealousy. I needed answers. The unease had been building for weeks, and now it was like a boiling pot threatening to spill over. I kept a safe distance behind her car, watching as she drove to her office. The commute was short, but it felt like hours. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was doing something wrong. But when she parked and walked into the building, I felt a strange sense of relief. It wasn't like I expected to find anything. I was just trying to make sense of everything. I waited for a bit, just sitting in my car, debating what to do next. After a few minutes, I noticed her walking out of the building with David. They were talking, laughing. David's hand brushed against hers as they stood at the corner, waiting for the light to change. They weren't doing anything inappropriate, but the way they interacted made something in me twist. It was like they shared a joke that I wasn't part of, a private world that I wasn't invited to. As they crossed the street together, I saw it, the way she looked at him. There was admiration there. She was hanging on every word he said. She didn't look at me like that anymore. I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to scream, to confront them both. But I stayed still, unable to move, trapped in my own head. I had never felt more invisible, more like an outsider in my own life. When they finally parted ways, I drove home, not knowing what to do with what I had seen. The doubt was there now, impossible to ignore. Something had changed between us, something that I didn't understand. That night, when she came home, everything seemed normal. She was smiling, talking about her day, but I couldn't focus on anything she was saying. All I could think about was what I had witnessed, how she had looked at David, how her laughter had sounded when she was with him. I wanted to ask her about it, but the words wouldn't come. What if I was just being paranoid? What if it was nothing? But deep down, I knew something had shifted. I couldn't explain it, but I could feel it in the air between us. The more I tried to ignore it, the stronger the feeling became. It was like a dark cloud hanging over me, and no matter how much I tried to push it away, it wouldn't go. I watched her that night, noticing the way she seemed more distant than before. She was texting David again, something she hadn't done as much recently. I couldn't help myself. I leaned in closer to try and catch a glimpse of the screen. But she caught me. Her eyes darted up, her face briefly registering surprise before she gave me a small smile. "Are you spying on me now?" she asked, almost teasing. I forced a laugh. "I was just checking to see if you were still awake." She didn't seem suspicious, but I could tell she wasn't entirely comfortable either. I couldn't shake the feeling that she knew something had changed, too. I wasn't the same man I had been before. I wasn't the man she'd laughed with in the past, the one who made her feel safe. No, now I was the man who sat in the corner, quietly watching her, trying to figure out what she was hiding. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering where we went wrong. Where had I lost her? Was it David who had filled the space I had once occupied? The thought gnawed at me, and I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. There was more to this story than I was willing to admit, and it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen, what I hadn't seen, and what it all meant. Melissa seemed different, but then again, so did I. I couldn't even look at her the same way anymore, not after what I had witnessed. I tried to play it cool, pretending like everything was fine, but each time she laughed a little too easily with her coworkers, each time she mentioned David's name with that familiar, too comfortable tone, something inside me twisted. I hated it. I hated how powerless I felt, like I had no control over what was happening to my life. It was like she had drifted away without even realizing it. Or maybe she did realize it. Maybe she was making her choice, little by little, and I was just too blind to see it. I couldn't ask her directly, not yet. I wasn't ready for the confrontation. Not because I was afraid of what she'd say, but because I wasn't ready to hear the truth. What if I was right? What if I was slowly losing her? The thought alone made my stomach churn. That Friday evening, we were sitting on the couch together, a rare moment of quiet between us. Melissa had come home earlier than usual, which made me feel a little hopeful. Maybe we could talk. Maybe we could reconnect. But as she sat next to me, she pulled out her phone, started scrolling through messages, and I felt that familiar knot in my chest. I tried to focus on the TV, but my mind kept drifting back to the texts. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't help myself. My eyes wandered to her phone, just for a moment. That's when I saw it. A message from David. "See you tonight at the office party? I'll be waiting for you," winky face. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just a casual message. It was flirtatious. It was personal. I could feel my pulse quicken. I tried to play it off, to pretend I didn't care, but I couldn't. I felt the heat rising in my face, the anger building inside me. This wasn't just work anymore. This wasn't just a simple friendship. She was hiding something, something that wasn't meant for my eyes, and I was furious. Furious at her for doing this behind my back. Furious at myself for not seeing it sooner. "Who's that?" I asked, my voice trembling with barely controlled emotion. She glanced at the phone, her expression quickly shifting from casual to guarded. "Oh, it's nothing. Just a work thing." She put the phone down quickly, but the damage was already done. The words echoed in my head. "I'll be waiting for you." The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. I wasn't supposed to be the guy sitting on the sidelines, watching her flirt with another man. I stared at her, trying to read her face, trying to find some sign that this was all a misunderstanding. But there was nothing there. She looked indifferent. I couldn't even remember the last time she looked at me like she actually cared. "Melissa," I started, my voice shaking a little. I hated how weak I sounded. "Are you seeing him? Is there something going on between you two?" Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something, guilt, maybe? But she quickly masked it with a smile. "No, of course not. It's just work. You know how things get." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the longer she talked, the more I felt the distance growing between us. She was lying. I could feel it, deep down, like a gut punch I couldn't escape. She was lying, and I didn't know how to get the truth out of her. How could I confront her when I wasn't even sure if I was ready for the answer? That night, I lay awake in bed, unable to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with him, laughing, sharing moments, smiling in ways she hadn't smiled at me in months. I couldn't stop the thoughts from flooding my mind. I had never felt so completely invisible. I could feel the relationship slipping away, and the worst part was that I didn't know how to stop it. The next morning, Melissa acted like nothing had changed. She made breakfast, talked about plans for the weekend, but I couldn't hear her. I could only hear David's voice in my head, the message he'd sent her. "I'll be waiting for you." It was like the words were branded into my brain, and no matter how much I tried to block them out, they stayed with me. I wasn't the kind of person who would usually keep track of everything, but now it was different. I couldn't let it go. I started paying closer attention to her every move, her every word, searching for clues, searching for something to explain the way she was acting. Was it just a phase? Was I imagining things? Or was this the beginning of the end? One evening, after dinner, she told me she was going out with some friends from work. It wasn't anything new, but tonight, something inside me snapped. I told her I was coming with her. I needed to know what was really going on, and I wasn't going to sit idly by anymore. I wasn't going to let her disappear into a world where I didn't belong. I wasn't sure what I was expecting to find, but the minute we stepped into the bar, everything changed. I saw them together, Melissa and David, standing at the bar, laughing. Their laughter was different. It was easier, warmer. And then he touched her arm, just lightly, but enough for me to notice. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my thoughts racing. Was this it? Was this the moment when I realized I had lost her? I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't let this go any longer. Something had to change, and I was about to find out just how far Melissa was willing to go. I couldn't help but watch them from across the room. It wasn't just jealousy. It was this overwhelming sense of powerlessness. The way they interacted, too comfortable, too familiar, made my stomach churn. I never considered myself the jealous type, but seeing them together like that, sharing that connection I no longer seemed to have with her, was a gut punch. They were talking, laughing, and I saw him reach out and gently touch her shoulder. The simple gesture, so casual, yet so intimate, made my heart sink. How had it come to this? Melissa was laughing, her head tilted back slightly, the same laugh I hadn't heard in months. And I didn't think it was because of the conversation they were having. It was the way he looked at her, the way she looked at him. It wasn't just friendly. It wasn't just work acquaintanceship. This was something else entirely. I felt like an outsider in my own life. I couldn't stand it any longer. I had to know, had to confront her. But how? What could I say? How could I accuse her of something when I had no solid evidence, just gut feelings? I didn't want to be the crazy husband who ruined a good night, but everything in me screamed that something was off. The more I stood there, the more I realized I wasn't the man she wanted anymore. I wasn't the one she sought comfort in, the one she turned to after a long day. That place had been taken. So, instead of walking up to them and causing a scene, I did the next worst thing. I waited. I stayed in the corner, nursing my drink, pretending like everything was fine, while they continued to talk. I watched them, my thoughts spinning, my pulse racing. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I had no real reason to feel this way. But the more I observed, the more I realized that my gut instinct wasn't wrong. It wasn't until later in the evening when things took a more telling turn. David, with his charming grin, leaned in a little too close to Melissa. I could see her glance up at him with a look that I hadn't seen on her face in so long. A look of genuine affection, something more than friendship. And then, when she brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, her hand briefly brushed against his chest. It was nothing overtly inappropriate, but it was enough to make my stomach twist. I couldn't ignore it anymore. This wasn't just harmless fun. There was something more, and I had been blind to it. Finally, when they said their goodbyes, Melissa came over to me. She kissed me on the cheek, her lips cool against my skin, but I could tell she wasn't really there. She wasn't looking at me the way she used to. She was distracted, her mind still with David, probably wondering when she'd see him again. She didn't say much, just the usual, "I'm tired, let's go home," as if nothing had happened. On the way home, I stayed quiet, letting the weight of what I'd seen settle into my bones. I had so many questions, so many things I wanted to ask her, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. What would be the point? She was already slipping away, and I couldn't get her back by accusing her. We got home, and Melissa went straight to the bathroom, as usual, without a word. I sat on the couch, staring at the wall, feeling more alone than I had in a long time. I was in a house with my wife, but it felt like I was a stranger. I tried to distract myself with TV, but my mind kept drifting back to David, to her smile, her laughter. It wasn't just the look they shared or the touch. It was the way she seemed to light up around him, as if she was happy, truly happy, in a way I hadn't made her feel in so long. I heard the water running in the bathroom, and for some reason, that sound felt like it was miles away. It was as if we were in two completely different worlds. When Melissa came out of the bathroom, I could tell she was acting like everything was normal, like I hadn't just seen the way she had looked at him, or the way she had touched him. She tried to talk about something random, a show we had watched, a movie she was thinking of seeing. But I couldn't focus on that. "Are you okay?" she asked, looking at me with those soft eyes that used to be full of warmth. "Yeah," I replied, even though I wasn't. "Just tired." She nodded, accepting my answer, and went to the kitchen to make a snack. I could feel her retreating, pulling away more with every minute that passed. I wasn't sure if she even noticed it anymore. But I did. I noticed every little shift, every moment that made me realize that the man she had once loved was no longer the one sitting in front of her. And that was the hardest part. I wasn't sure when it had happened, when I had become invisible, when she had started choosing someone else over me. But tonight had made it clear, Melissa wasn't mine anymore. She was slipping away, and I had no idea how to stop it. No idea how to pull her back before it was too late. The worst part was, I wasn't even sure I could. The days that followed felt like I was walking in a fog. I tried to talk to her, tried to bridge the growing distance between us, but it was like trying to catch smoke with my bare hands. Every attempt to have a genuine conversation seemed to slip through my fingers. She was always busy, always distracted, always somewhere else. And I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't just work or stress. It was him, David. Every time she mentioned his name, something in my chest twisted. One afternoon, while I was sitting on the couch scrolling through some emails, I overheard her talking to a friend on the phone in the next room. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear her voice, low but clear. "Yeah, David's been really helpful lately. He's so much more proactive than anyone else at the office. Honestly, I don't know what I'd do without him." There it was again. That name. That man. I could feel my blood boil, but I stayed quiet. I couldn't let her see how much it hurt. I couldn't let her know that every mention of David felt like a nail in my coffin. I thought I had been strong, thought I could handle it. But now, every time she spoke to him or about him, the knife twisted deeper. When she finally hung up the phone, she walked into the room, and for the first time in weeks, our eyes met. There was something in her gaze, something different, something that made my heart race. It was like she was trying to read me, trying to gauge how much I knew. She smiled softly and asked if I wanted to go out for dinner. I nodded, my stomach a mix of anticipation and dread. That evening, as we sat in the restaurant, the silence between us was unbearable. I picked at my food, barely tasting it, while she went on about her day, about work, about how busy she was. I couldn't focus on anything she was saying. All I could hear in my head was the image of her with David, laughing, leaning into him. She seemed to be unaware of the tension building between us, unaware of how much her words were affecting me. She talked, but it was as if I wasn't even there. Halfway through the meal, I finally couldn't take it anymore. I set my fork down, took a deep breath, and said, "Melissa, we need to talk." Her smile faltered, just for a moment, before she regained her composure. "About what?" she asked, her voice so calm that it almost felt like she was playing some kind of game. "About us," I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. About everything that's been going on. You've been distant. I don't know what's happening, but I can feel it. Her eyes flickered for the briefest of moments, and then she sighed, putting down her wine glass. I don't know what you mean. Everything's fine. But it wasn't fine. I could see the way she avoided my gaze, the way her words felt rehearsed. I pressed on, my voice barely a whisper now. You're seeing him, aren't you? David. You've been spending all this time with him. Her face froze, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. I could feel the air between us thickening. She was trying to control her expression, trying to keep herself composed. I could see the guilt in her eyes, and it made my blood run cold. She wasn't even trying to deny it anymore. Melissa, I started, my voice trembling now, but she cut me off. Don't do this, she said, her voice sharp. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Her hands were shaking slightly as she reached for her glass of water. I could see the walls she had built around herself rising higher, pushing me further away. You've been pulling away from me for weeks, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You've been making excuses. And now I see you with him. What am I supposed to think? She looked at me, her face a mixture of frustration and something else, something I couldn't quite place. I don't want to hurt you, she said, her voice low. But you haven't been the same lately. You're always distant, always distracted, and I've been doing everything I can to keep things together, but it's hard when you won't even talk to me. The words hit me like a slap to the face. I hadn't even realized how much I had been shutting down. I had been so consumed with my own insecurities, my own fears, that I hadn't noticed her slipping away, too. But what she said next shattered whatever was left of my composure. I don't know what you want me to do, James. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not. I don't want to be in a relationship where I'm the only one trying. I sat there, stunned, not knowing how to respond. All this time, I had thought it was just me, that I was the one falling short. But now, I realized that she had been pulling away for much longer than I had thought. She had been searching for something, someone else, and I had let it happen. I need time, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I need to figure out what I want. I sat there in silence, the weight of her words crashing down on me. She had already made her decision, and as much as I tried to convince myself that I could fix it, that I could make things right, I knew deep down that it was too late. She had already chosen. The rest of the evening was a blur. We finished our meal in silence, and when we got home, she went straight to the bedroom without another word. I sat in the living room, staring at the walls, wondering where I had gone wrong. And deep down, I knew the answer. I had let her slip through my fingers, too busy focusing on my own doubts, my own insecurities, to see that she was already gone. I spent the next few days in a haze. Melissa's words echoed in my mind like a constant hum. I need time, she had said. I don't want to be in a relationship where I'm the only one trying. Those words, sharp and cold, lingered in the air long after she said them. It was as if they had been a quiet, inevitable prelude to the slow unraveling of everything I thought I knew about our marriage. I had spent so long denying that something was wrong, convincing myself that the occasional distance, the quiet moments between us, was just part of life. But no, this was different. She had already made up her mind. And now, I was left to pick up the pieces of something that was slipping away faster than I could understand. Every time I walked past her empty office space at home, it felt like a reminder of everything I had lost. I didn't want to admit it, but I could see the signs now. The late nights, the extra work, events, the strange energy between her and David. I hadn't imagined it. The distance had been there, palpable, growing in the silence between us. And now, here I was, sitting in our living room, unable to find the words to bridge the gap. I didn't know how to fix it, or if it was even fixable. The quiet between us became unbearable. She would leave in the morning, barely looking at me before she was out the door, and return late at night, often exhausted but never willing to talk about anything more than the surface details of her day. I wanted to ask her where she had been, why she hadn't called, but I didn't. Every time I opened my mouth to say something, my voice seemed to catch, as though I was too afraid of hearing the truth. Then, one afternoon, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know. I had to hear it from her, even if it meant facing the brutal truth. I was sitting at the kitchen table, absently stirring my coffee when she came downstairs, her hair pulled back into a tight ponytail, her eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. as though she were trying to hide from the world, or maybe from me. She had been like this for days now, distant, cold, almost unreachable. "Melissa," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but steady. I couldn't let the fear take over. "We need to talk." She froze, her hand gripping the railing of the stairs for a moment before she let go and turned to face me. I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Was it guilt? Or just exhaustion? I couldn't tell. "Not now, James," she said softly, almost apologetically. "I'm really not in the mood." I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. "No, we can't keep avoiding this. I need to know, Melissa. What's going on? Are you seeing him? David, I mean. Is there something between you two?" The question hung in the air like a weight between us, and for a moment, it felt like everything stopped. She didn't immediately respond, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. Her lips trembled as she opened her mouth, but no words came out at first. The seconds felt like hours. Finally, she took a deep breath and sat down on the couch, rubbing her temples as if she were trying to ward off a headache. "I don't know what you want me to say," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Yes, I've been spending time with David. He's been a good friend to me lately. But it's not what you think. It's just been easier with him." "Easier," I repeated, my chest tightening. "Easier than what? Than being with me?" She met my eyes for the first time in days, and I saw the truth there, raw and painful. "Yes," she admitted, the word cutting through the air. "It's been easier, James. You've been so distant. I've tried to reach you, tried to talk to you, but it felt like you weren't even there. And David, he's been there. He listens to me. He actually listens, James." Her words were like a punch to the gut. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could do was watch her as she spoke, her words cutting deeper than anything I'd ever felt. I had been so wrapped up in my own insecurities, in the fear of losing her, that I hadn't even noticed how much I had been pushing her away. I had been so focused on my doubts and jealousy that I couldn't see that the real issue was how I had been neglecting her, how I had become absent in my own marriage. "Is that it then?" I whispered, my voice shaky, barely holding together. "You've just fallen for him?" Melissa shook her head, her eyes filling with tears, but she didn't look away. "No, James. I haven't fallen for him. But I'm not blind. I know what's been happening. I know that things between us haven't been right for a long time. I'm not asking for you to understand. I just need you to see what's happening." She wiped away a tear, looking down at her hands. "I don't want to hurt you. I don't. But I can't keep pretending anymore. I'm lost, James. I'm lost in this mess we've created." I felt the air leave my lungs, the weight of her words crushing me. I had known, deep down, that something was wrong, but hearing it out loud, hearing her say it so plainly, was too much. The truth was right there in front of me, and I had no idea how to fix it, or if it could even be fixed. For a long time, neither of us spoke. We sat in the silence, both of us broken in our own way. I had been holding on to something that wasn't there anymore, and now, I was finally forced to face it. She looked up at me, her voice quiet. "I don't know what's next, James, but I need space to figure it out." And with those words, it was clear. Our marriage wasn't just on the rocks. It was crashing down, piece by piece. I didn't know how to stop it, or if I even could. That night, I barely slept. The weight of her words, of the truth that had been hanging between us for so long, crushed me. I had never felt so small, so helpless. I thought I was doing what I could, being the supportive husband, the one who kept everything together, but I had failed her. I had failed us. I thought I was the one who had been betrayed, but what she had said, how she had been feeling, opened my eyes to the bigger picture. I hadn't been there for her. I hadn't been the partner she needed, the person who could listen and support her. I had been so lost in my own fears, so wrapped up in my own insecurities, that I didn't even see her slipping away. She had been telling me for months, in little ways, that something was wrong, but I couldn't hear her. I was too busy watching her laugh with David, feeling that sickening jealousy bubble up every time his name came up in conversation. I had pushed her into his arms, without even realizing it. The next morning, everything felt different. I woke up alone. Melissa had left early, as usual. Her side of the bed was cold. I sat there for a moment, staring at the empty space beside me, feeling the weight of her absence. It was like a physical ache. I couldn't remember the last time we had shared something real, the last time she had looked at me the way she had once done. Now, She was looking for comfort elsewhere, from someone who was there for her when I wasn't. I tried to keep myself busy, tried to convince myself that it was just a rough patch, that it would get better. But deep down, I knew it wasn't going to. I knew that the damage had already been done, that she had already checked out of this relationship emotionally. I had lost her, bit by bit, and now, the reality of it was sinking in. As I sat there, trying to focus on the work in front of me, I heard the door open. Melissa was back. I didn't know what to expect, but when she stepped into the room, I felt the shift in the air. She wasn't the same woman who had kissed me goodbye just a few days ago. She was guarded, distant, as if she had already made her mind up. The space between us felt vast, and no words I could say would close that gap. She came over to me, her face soft, but her eyes were tired. "James, we need to talk," she said, her voice steady, but I could hear the exhaustion in it. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. About us." I nodded, feeling the familiar lump form in my throat. I knew what was coming. She was going to say what she had already hinted at, that she needed space, that she needed to figure things out, or worse, that she had already made her decision. "I don't want to hurt you," she said, sitting down across from me. "I don't. But I've been so unhappy for so long. I don't feel like you're really here with me anymore. You're physically here, but emotionally, it's like I'm living with a stranger. And I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending that everything's okay when it's not." Her words were a dagger to my chest. I had been blind, hadn't I? I had been so focused on my own pain, on my own insecurities, that I didn't even see how much she had been struggling. I had failed her, not in some grand, obvious way, but in the small, everyday moments that mattered most. I had failed to connect with her. I had failed to be the partner she needed me to be. "I've been seeing David more," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what's happening, but he listens to me, James. He makes me feel heard, something I haven't felt in a long time. And I don't want to hurt you by saying this, but I can't ignore it anymore. I don't know if I want to keep going like this. I don't know if I can." I was numb. I could hear her, but I couldn't process it. This wasn't happening. This wasn't my life. I had always believed we would make it through anything, that we were stronger than the rest. But this was different. This wasn't just a phase or a miscommunication. This was her telling me that I wasn't enough. And what hurt the most wasn't that she was looking elsewhere for comfort. It was that she had already made up her mind. I took a deep breath, trying to hold myself together, but it felt like everything was slipping through my fingers. "What do you want me to do?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What can I do to fix this?" She shook her head, her eyes filled with sorrow. "I don't know, James. I don't know if there's anything left to fix. Maybe we're just too far gone." Her words hit me harder than anything she had said before. I felt the tears welling up, but I didn't let them fall. Not in front of her. I couldn't show her how broken I was, how much I still loved her, even though she had already made her decision. "I never meant for it to get like this," she whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you. But I think we need to let go. I think we need to stop pretending that everything is fine." I sat there, silent, as she got up and walked away, leaving me alone with nothing but the heavy weight of her words. She was right. We couldn't keep pretending. But in that moment, I wasn't sure how to let go. How do you walk away from someone you still love? Someone who was once your everything? The reality hit me all at once, like a flood. She had already let go, and now I was left behind. The days that followed were some of the hardest I'd ever faced. Melissa and I hardly spoke. She spent most of her time at work, and I stayed in the house, trying to figure out what went wrong, trying to make sense of everything. It felt like I was living in a fog, unsure of where I was going or what I was supposed to do next. But even as everything around me seemed to be falling apart, I knew one thing. I couldn't give up without a fight. I had spent so much time focusing on what I'd lost, on how far Melissa had pulled away, on the mistakes I had made, that I hadn't given myself a chance to think about what I could still do. I hadn't realized how much I had neglected myself in the process. I'd become so wrapped up in my marriage, in making things work, that I had forgotten to take care of me. And maybe, just maybe, if I could start by taking care of myself, I could show her the person I once was, the person she fell in love with. It wasn't an easy journey. I took the time to focus on things I had neglected for far too long. I started exercising again, something I used to love, something that helped clear my mind. I picked up old hobbies I had abandoned. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years. I made a conscious effort to find joy in small things, in the moments I had been too focused on my fears to enjoy before. The most important thing I did, though, was reflect on myself, on who I had become. I spent a lot of time thinking about the man I wanted to be, not just for Melissa, but for me. I realized that I couldn't fix our relationship if I didn't first fix myself. It was a slow process, but it was one I was committed to. About 2 weeks later, Melissa came home from work later than usual. She was quiet, but there was something different in the way she looked at me, something softer. I hadn't seen that look in a long time, and I couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. "James," she said, standing in the doorway. "I've been thinking a lot, and I realize that I've made a lot of mistakes too. I've been so focused on everything else that I forgot about us. I forgot about what we meant to each other." I looked at her, my heart racing, unsure of where this conversation would lead. "Melissa, I know I haven't been perfect, and I've made so many mistakes. But I've been working on myself. I've been trying to become the man I was before, the man who could make you smile, the one who was there for you no matter what." She took a deep breath and stepped closer to me. "I see that," she said softly, "and I'm sorry for pulling away. I was so focused on what I didn't have that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. You." Her words, so simple yet so powerful, made my heart swell with emotion. "You don't have to apologize," I said. "I've been blind to how much I've pushed you away, and I've learned that I need to focus on being a better version of myself, not just for you, but for me, too." We stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, letting the silence speak for us. It wasn't perfect, and there were still things we needed to work through. But in that moment, I realized that we still had a chance. We still had something worth saving. "We're not perfect," she said, her voice soft, "but I want to try. I want to try again, James. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I still love you. And I think that's enough for us to start over." And with those words, a weight lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. Maybe things wouldn't go back to the way they were. Maybe we would never be the same couple we had been before. But we were willing to try. And that, in itself, was enough. We started small, with late-night talks, with cooking dinner together again, with taking those small steps to rebuild the trust and connection we had once shared. It wasn't easy. It took time, patience, and a lot of hard work. But each day, we found our way back to each other, rediscovering the love that had always been there, just waiting to be rekindled. The road wasn't always smooth, and there were moments of doubt along the way, but we were both committed. And with that commitment, we found a new understanding of each other, a new appreciation for the things that mattered. We had weathered the storm, and while the scars would remain, they were reminders of how far we had come. In the end, I realized that love isn't about perfection. It's about growth, about learning from mistakes, about being willing to try again. And as I looked at Melissa, smiling at me for the first time in what felt like forever, I knew that no matter what the future held, we would face it together. Because sometimes, even when everything feels lost, it only takes one moment, one conversation, one realization, to change everything. And for us, that moment had come.